technology business. And to me, it was the most absurd argument I ever heard, and I took it right through to the day we closed the IBM deal. But the fact is that managed services business, which our Global Threat Operations Center, which is headquartered in this building, was and remains and will continue to remain the lifeblood of everything that happens in this company. So when Wall Street says you can't be in that business, I feel like the monkey looking at the plastic banana. I know something is wrong here, and I'm not quite sure how to explain, but anyway, also in this facility, we conduct all of our research and development for our products, with the exception of a few. We have a research and development lab for content security in Kassel, Germany. Why in Kassel, Germany? Because there's a wonderful university there, and the German DoD is there with a big research facility. So we've been able to find lots of very bright content security engineers in that location, and we maintain a lab there. Other than that, this is corporate headquarters. We greet our customers here, and the basic operations of the company happens here. Just a profile on us. Almost 50% of our business today comes from outside the United States. And I think that's one thing you have to prepare for as an entrepreneur in a flat world, and you got to figure out how to get there. I'll tell you a little bit about our story, why our 10th employee was our head of Europe, and our 27th employee headed up Asia. And those were big, risky bets at a time when a company really didn't have a balance sheet or any capital, but it was being driven by a strategy. Again, there was lots of risk in it, but I'll show you how that strategy unfolded and has paid off for us in spades. And it was driven more by a rule of thumb than any brilliance, so I'll tell you that too. And so, about 50% of our revenue comes from outside the United States. About 40% of our employees, give or take, 35% of our employees are outside the United States. The rate of growth outside the United States is faster than growth inside the United States. Again, the world is flat, and we had a strategy going back all the way to the beginning of the founding of the company, and it was a massive debate, because I was with Chris Klaus, who was, I can touch anyone from the internet, I can sit in my grandmother's house, why do I want an employee in Europe when I can serve them over the internet? And then there was me, the old-fashioned guy, saying, wherever our customers are, we got to be. And so I won that argument, but Chris won it too, as you've seen looking at the performance of the company. And so the company this year will have about, we're on a track to do about $400 million in revenue in terms of our run rate. And I think, as you all know, on October 20th, I believe, was the date that the company was, or sometime around there, the company formally became a division of IBM, which we're very proud of, and which we think is an absolutely great outcome for our customers. It's a great outcome for our employees, and it's a great outcome for our shareholders. They had to vote on it, so I put them third, because they were the only one that had a choice in the matter, and they could have voted for it or they could have voted against it. But in voting for it, they voted for our customers and our employees. So I have a lot of respect for them, because they made the right decision. So this concept of the soul of the entrepreneur, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ISS story, and then I'll weave some of the important decisions that we made as a company and how they kind of affected us down the road, how we dealt with the bubble, because it was painful, and we decided at that time that we were going to live, that we weren't going to go by the wayside, and we did something really simple. We got very, very focused, and it was all about profitability, because as long as we could be profitable, We didn't care how many meltdowns there were, we could survive. So in this soul of the entrepreneur, I guess the first question is, what is an entrepreneur? I'm not so sure I have a good textbook definition. Saeed Mohammedian here in town, I was done lots of things in town with him, and he's a great leader in this city and a great entrepreneur himself. He says being an entrepreneur is absolutely, positively, completely irrational, because typically you're pursuing something that hasn't been done before. You're putting all your money and time and effort into it. There's no certainty in the outcome, and yet, people take these odds and pursue it. In my particular case, I met Chris Klaus actually over the internet back in 1994. And I didn't really meet him. He was posting a bunch of stuff from a Georgia Tech account, and I went to Georgia Tech, but I was living in New York at the time, and I was working for Dun & Bradstreet, and as you know, Dun & Bradstreet was kind of the biggest seller of information in the world. Sold all kinds of credit reports and business information, everything else, and Bob Weissman, the CEO of Dun & Bradstreet, said, I keep hearing about this internet, and every time I hear about it, it's basically framed in this message that information is going to be free and ubiquitous to everyone. Well, if you're Dun & Bradstreet, you've cornered the market on information, you want to go answer that question for yourself and for your shareholders. So I was one of the guys doing that. And basically, in those days we didn't have browsers. We were interacting with the internet in a different way. There weren't really, lots of websites. There were lots and lots of different user groups and bulletin boards and all kinds of things out there. But the thing that struck me was one thing you couldn't argue, and that was that the internet was built upon a design to be open, easy to access, to enable collaboration. There was never one iota of a security model dreamed into it, built into it. It was, it was a big petri dish for all the bacteria in the world to jump in and grow. And so, in looking at that, it occurred to me that the 4 years I had spent with John Imlay trying to build proprietary client-server systems and watching the customer struggle from one proprietary standard to another proprietary standard, that sooner or later an open standard was going to, fundamentally change the way the whole world of technology works. And, the only one that kind of existed at the time was this thing that universities and governments and other people were using. Businesses were using it too. We're using certain protocols to move files back and forth to each other, etc. And so that's really where I met Chris. And at I was flying home to Atlanta every weekend, and at a christening of a baby, I ran into Kevin O'Connor. Kevin I had known for years at DCA. And I told Kevin about, what I was doing, what I was thinking. That was right at the time Attachmate was bought. DCA was bought by Attachmate, and Kevin was here in town trying to figure out what he was going to do, and he said, I'm going to go talk to him. And next thing I knew, Kevin and I and Chris were talking. I was flying back from New York, and that's when I decided to walk from Dun & Bradstreet. And that was a pretty irrational thing, because I had 3 kids. The oldest was 4. So my wife wasn't working. I had for me it was a big mortgage. I think I had a $300 house and I had a $290,000 mortgage. So I put a lot into that baby. And so, to walk away and not have an income was kind of an interesting feeling for the first time. And just a disclaimer on me, I grew up here in Atlanta, and I started working at the old Standard Club over here at Lenox. I used to ride my Schwinn bike there and drag the tennis courts from the time I was 12. So I was thinking, I have always had a paycheck from the time I have been 12 years old, and now for the first time in my life I don't have a paycheck, and I'm 32. Seemed like I was going in the wrong direction. At 12 I shouldn't have had a paycheck, and at 32 I should have. But so that's the first thing, and I don't know what causes that. I think for me it was very simple. It was, I thought it was going to be a really, really big thing, and I thought Chris knew enough about security. I didn't know a damn thing about security, I'll tell you that. And there are many in my industry that say he hasn't changed a bit. So, you know, Chris was a brilliant security mind, but my background coming out of Georgia Tech was automatic control systems. And so I had a very technical background, and, you know, one of the things that I think made ISS unique is the two founders had two very different backgrounds and two very different, you know, kind of foundations, but we brought those two together because Chris and I basically said, let's build an automatic control system for risk. Humans cannot deal with the security threat on the internet. It happens too fast. It's all got to be automated, and it's got to be intelligent. So let's build a security system that's an automatic control system. And the thing that's controlled